Hello everyone, welcome to the DevOps Planet. In this video, we will see how we can create AWS RDS Aurora cluster. So first, why we need AWS Aurora? What is the difference between AWS RDS general instance and Aurora cluster? So the main advantage of Aurora is it support the writer and reader architecture, or we can call it as master slave architecture. So by this I mean we can have separate instance to write the data and separate instance to read the data. And also it support the auto scaling. So whenever the load will increase on our cluster, it will automatically create some replicas so that we can easily manage the traffic on our database. So let's see how we can create AWS RDS Aurora cluster. So for this, first we need to go to the RDS service. So type RDS in the search bar and here you will see the RDS service. Click on this. It will redirect you to the RDS service homepage. So here we can see now we are in the homepage of the RDS cluster. So here we can create the database by clicking on this button. So I'm clicking here. Now here we need to select whether we want to create a single instance or we want to create the Aurora cluster. So in my last video, we saw how we can create MySQL database. Here we will see how we can set up the Aurora cluster that support MySQL. So for this, we need to select the Aurora engine type here that supports the MySQL. Now scroll down. Here we can select the available versions. So I'm going with the default one, that is latest. And then here we need to decide for which use we want to set up this cluster. So for production, click on this button, and for the dev or testing environment, click on this button. So I'm going with the dev or test. Now here we need to pass the cluster identifier, so which will be the name of the cluster. So I am passing a name, that is DevOps Planet cluster. Now scroll down. Here we need to pass the username. So that will be the master username to log in into our cluster. By default, it is admin. If you want, you can change it. So I'm going with the default one. Then if you want to create a password yourself, you can type the password here, or if you want that it will automatically create a password for your database, you can select this option. So I am selecting this one. So it will automatically generate a password for me. Then scroll down. So here we have three classes. First is serverless, second is memory optimized, and third is bustable classes. So serverless means we need not to think about the RAM, CPU and other resources. It will automatically scale the instance based on the demand. In the memory optimized, we have the high memory instances here, and in the bustable classes we have low memories and CPUs clusters. So I am selecting the bustable class and I'm going with the T3 medium because that is definitely make impact on our cost. So I'm going with this one. Now scroll down. Here is the main option that you need to select based on your requirement. So if you want to create only one instance, then you need to select this option that you don't want to create a replica. But if you want to create a reader and writer replica separately, you can click this option. So it will basically create a reader replica in a different availability zone. Now scroll down. Here you need to select the network configuration. So you can select the VPC or you can create a new one. So I'm going with the default VPC, then subnet. Now here, if you want to access the RDS outside of the VPC, so in that case you need to select here yes. So I am selecting this option as yes. Now scroll down. You need to select the security group. So you can go with the existing one or you can click on create new. So I'm clicking on create new and I'm passing the name here, that is Aurora SG security group. Now scroll down. Now there is another feature which has been introduced by the AWS recently, that is turn on local write forwarding. So via this you will able to write some basic queries. You will able to execute some basic queries over to the AWS replica. So you can see here that you can issue data in DML statements, but it will not support each and every write operation. It will support few write operations. So if you want to write in the reader itself, then you need to select this option. So currently I am not clicking on it because I want writer separate and reader separate. I don't want to write anything on my reader instance. Then scroll down. Here if you want to collect the enhanced monitoring for your RDS, then you need to select this option, otherwise disable it. Then in the additional configuration, there are other details that if you want to change anything, the parameter group, the initial database, if you want to create any initial database automatically via the AWS, then you can pass that name here and other options. So I'm not changing anything here. And here you will see the final cost based on your instance type and other configuration. Then once it is done, you need to click on create database. So it will start to create the database. It will give us a username and password because password we are not passing here, and the other information. So now it has started creating our database, and you can see that the output is slightly different than a general RDS. So here we have a cluster. This is the cluster name which we passed, and here you can see it is creating two instances. One is writer, one is reader. Currently it is showing both reader, but once it is created it will update automatically because it's still in an initial state. And here it has launched two instances and both are of the same size, and also the availability zone is also different. One is US East 1B, second is US East 1D. So this will take almost 15 minutes. So let me pause this video. So as you can see, our cluster creation has been done. The status is available, and also our two instance has been created. So the role also updated. Earlier both were reader, but now we can see one is writer and one is reader. And if you scroll up, you can see the green message here for the connection details. So click on the view connection details. So here is the username, here is the password, and here is the endpoint. So let me note these details so that we will able to log in. And we have the host name. So the endpoint by default it provides is the cluster endpoint, or we can say the writer instance endpoint. So, and if you want to create the cluster, then you can use this endpoint. But if you want to create writer instance separately and reader instance separately, so for that we have two endpoints. One is for the writer and one is for the reader. So to get the writer endpoint, click on this writer instance. And if you scroll down, here you will see the connectivity and endpoint. And this is the endpoint of the writer. So let me note it also. And for the reader instance, click on the reader. And you will see the endpoint here. This is the reader endpoint. So now first let me connect with the writer endpoint. So I'm launching PowerShell. And I'm using the MySQL client to log in. So MySQL-u, username is admin, -p is for password, and -h is the host name. So let me pass the writer host name. Prompt for password. Now let me pass the password here that we have copied. Okay, so it is not able to connect because my system IP address has been changed. So we need to change the IP address in the security group. So let me open the security group. So for this, I'm going to VPC. And here is the security groups in the left menu. So click on the security groups. This is the security group which we created for Aurora. So I'm selecting this and scroll down. You will see the inbound roles here. So click on edit inbound rules, and it is currently allowed to this IP address. So let me allow it publicly and save. Now again I'm logging in into the writer. So let me copy the password and paste here. So now we are able to log in into the AWS RDS instance, and it is logged in inside the writer instance. So let me see the databases. Now let me create one database. So I'm creating one database named as testdb in the writer instance. So it has been created, and we can see here the testdb is here. Now I'm exiting it, and I will log in into the reader instance. So let me copy the reader instance endpoint, paste here, and then the password. So password and username will be same, but the host name will be different for reader and writer. So now we are logged in inside the reader instance, and now if I see here show databases, we can see the test DB is here. So it's in the real time syncing with the writer instance. So whatever data have you written in the writer instance, at that time only it will replicate into the reader instance. Now let me try to create one DB here, because we are in the reader instance. So query is create database, and I'm passing the name example. Okay, so let's press enter, and it's give that error that running in read-only mode, that this instance is running into the read-only mode. We can only execute the read queries. Whatever we will write into the writer instance will be replicate in the same time into the reader instance. So that is how we can create writer and reader instance in AWS Aurora. I hope you like this video. Thanks for watching this.